Hello, happy painters. I'm going to give you a quick little tour around the world of my palette. I have, quite a few colors that I use, generally focusing on about a dozen colors. I don't have as few or as many as some. And I'm also an omnivore as far as different companies of watercolor are concerned. I use I use a lot of different brands. So it all depends on the paint and what it does. So I'm going to start over on the left-hand corner over here, and these are pretty bright colors. I've got cadmium lemon and cadmium yellow pale, and then I've also got cadmium orange light. These are a couple of whites. I don't really care about whether it's a Chinese white or a titanium white. I've got a half pan of it and a tube of it if I would like some fresh color that hasn't been despoiled. In addition, I've got quinacridone gold here, and this is a second full pan of cadmium yellow or cadmium orange pale, and you can see that it's all covered in green. I use this for green to mix a lot of my greens, so I try to keep this cadmium orange untouched by green, and then I mix all my greens using this half pan, this whole pan. I've got cadmium red light and cadmium red deep. And then over here in this section are colors that botanical artists use a lot. This whole series of colors here is a grouping in the pink and violet area. It was really difficult at one time to find really permanent violets and roses, but now with the advent of quinacridone, the options are really endless. I have quinacridone magenta here. This is a Winsor & Newton, and then quinacridone magenta here also. And this is a Holbein color. This is quinacridone rose. It's a Rowney paint. And I want to show you what these do. So that's quinacridone rose. That's Rowney's quinacridone rose, and this is the quinacridone magenta. So recently I just kind of purchased a little bit broader range of the quinacridones in this pink area, and one that I've really enjoyed using is this quinacridone coral. This is a Daniel Smith color, and it's a very brilliant reddish rose. So it has the same effect as mixing some of this permanent rose with just a little tiny bit of cadmium red. So it's a really useful color. I've also got, I purchased Daniel Smith's quinacridone rose, which you can see flows out very nicely, and it does pack a punch. The pigment to binder ratio is really high in this, so it's a real pleasure to use. And of course that quinacridone rose can be shifted more toward a magenta by just mixing it with a little bit of the magenta, or it can also be shifted toward a cadmium by mixing a little bit of that cadmium in there. So you have a nice range that it provides, and you can see there's no granulation. It really flows out well. And then this color here is another brilliant color. This is by QOR, and it's they call it quinacridone red. It's a very intense rosy color that also is one that is tilted more toward a cadmium red. Another really useful color, flows out beautifully and mixes up so well with all those colors. So that's that section of the palette. I'll show you, the The cadmiums are always extremely useful. They're opaque paints, but I use them sometimes very dilute, and they cover well, they flow beautifully, and the main thing that I'm concerned about with all these paints is how permanent they are. And cadmium colors are very permanent, so I don't want my paintings to fade, so I am really careful about using all permanent pigments. So over here in the green side, of course, this is also, these green colors are also really important to botanical artists. And I don't mix my greens out of blue and yellow. Some people do. I start usually with a mixture of some of these colors here. And these colors, I have a cadmium green pale, which is a whole bean color. I've got a little red in that already, so we're going to take that out of there. Clean my brush a little bit better. And so a lot of my greens start with this bright yellow green, if they're bright light greens. And as I mentioned previously, I mix a lot of them with this cadmium orange. They make a nice yellowy green. The chroma of this cadmium gold, I want to get some of this cadmium gold out there so you can see what that looks like. You can see it's a little sticky, but that also mixes well with green and makes sort of a brilliant green gold. And then, you know, you can vary exactly how much gold is in that green. So this is a useful range of colors for leaves. And then if I want the leaves, if I've got leaves that are a little bit darker green, or I'm working with some of the shading in the leaf, I'll take an intermediate between this cadmium green pale, which is really a convenience color of viridian green and cadmium yellow. So it's very, very permanent. This is a fairly new color by Daniel Smith, which is Prussian green, and it's a little bit different from a phthalo green. The phthalo green has such strong chroma that it can be a little intense at times, but this has a nice, beautiful characteristic that it uses, that it adds to these leafy greens. So I can mix the green as dark as I want, and then I'll add a little touch of some red in here to sort of shift it to more olive green. And then you can make it more and more olive depending on how much red you put in there. And if you want it really dark, you can add a little bit of magenta, and that will darken it up. And then if you've got some really dark greens that you're working with, say you've got a magnolia leaf or something like an ivy leaf, something that's really dark, you can shift that green to a very dark green, mixing these two greens together. So you can start with a darker green, and then you can add a little bit of that magenta to make it even darker. Or you can use the cadmium red deep. Makes it a little bit more olivey. I recently added this Daniel Smith Permanent Green Light to the palette. It really is sort of an intermediary color between the cadmium green pale and this Prussian green. So this is a really useful leaf green too, and can be used to get a kind of medium green tone. And then if you really need to add some dark shadows in here, you can just push that quantity of magenta up, and you can continue to darken that green to the point where if you use just this Prussian green or something like a phthalo or a viridian green and the magenta, you can get these beautiful green, black, violet blacks, depending on which component of the two you put, you add the most of. So with the phthalo green and a magenta, you can get some really delicious dark blacks and violets and greens. And then the real workhorse of leaves for me is this chromium oxide green. It's an opaque green. It's kind of a dull green. It's got really great coverage, and it can be changed to a very cool green or a very warm green. You can change it to a warm green in the same way you change all these other greens to a warm green. I think I have a little bit too much red there. By just mixing in a warm color. So you can mix that with a cadmium red. Make some olive greens. If you want that green a little bit brighter, you can mix it again with this orange. Get a nice bright green there. But the way I often use it is for those cool leaves that you get, those leaves that are sort of waxy that you find on tulips and fritillarias. Sometimes irises have them. And I mix a range of colors that go between chromium oxide green and this cobalt blue. So usually between these three colors, I can put together those kinds of leaves. If I want them to be a little paler, a little more opaque, I add a little bit of white to them. And you can see you can get those waxy bloom colors that you have on some of those more cool blue-green leaves. This both of these greens can also be mixed with white for brighter areas on those kinds of leaves. And they make these nice little creamy, cool green colors. And then the last three colors, actually four colors on the palette. This is a cobalt violet. Cobalt violet is a lovely color. I've never really found one that isn't heavily bound, and this is no exception. It does provide this almost iridescent purple quality to color. I've always had to mix it with another color, but if I'm working with a magenta and it just needs to shift a little bit toward purple, that's a lot of magenta there, I will mix some of this cobalt violet in there, and you can see it makes a lovely purple color. It shifts it a little bit toward the blue. And then I have ultramarine violet here, and I use this a lot in shading. It's, I use it as an opposite color for some of the warmer flowers. Say if I have a yellow flower and I need to shade some of the veining in it or the petals, I'll add a little bit of this violet in there. And then I also use it to shade some of the greens. So if I need a darker shadow of one of the green colors, I'll add that violet. And that's usually the way I put shadows into leaves. The violet packs a little bit less of a punch than that magenta, so I'll often prefer to use this so that I don't have extreme shifts in color. It's got a very gentle way of darkening those greens. Every now and then it's good to have a little cerulean blue on the palette for those brilliant colors that you might need, sort of blue greens. It works, it's very useful Sometimes if you've got a highlight in a leaf, it's sort of a blue-green highlight if it's reflecting the sky. This cobalt blue, I just want to talk a little bit about the cobalt blue because I use that almost exclusively as a blue. And I like it because it's a little bit, it's very clean and very fresh for a blue. You can see what a beautiful color that is. And it just works so well with flowers and with leaves. I'm going to need a little bit of space here, so I'm going to clean off a little area here of the green. And I just wanted to show you what this burnt sienna does. Of course, I use this for bark and kind of woody stems. You can, sometimes a stem is has a little bit of reddish bark, so I'll mix any one of these reds or pinks with this to shift it toward a little bit of a rosier color. That is nothing but rose right there, so I'm going to add a little bit more brown. So you can see it has a very orangey brown cast to it. And you can also use it with this cobalt blue to make a broad range of browns. So, you know, they can be very cool if you put a lot of blue in, and they can be warmer if you put a little bit more of the burnt sienna in there. So that's the tour of my palette. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.